postponed from the 21st of October. Sorry about that. I'm better now, so that's good. We're still waiting for two more people, but we haven't had any apologies, have we? So just to do the minutes. Has everybody read the minutes? Do you agree with move them? Yeah. Okay, declarations of interest. Any declarations? Just remember, if anything comes up, just let us know. We can make a note of those. We haven't had any public questions, and there's no public here. So moving on. So we've got the first item on the agenda, which is number 4, to look at the progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. Has everybody had time to have a look at those?
Chairman, it's a very short paper because obviously you've only had one meeting, and we made some progress on that, and that will obviously be populated in the future when we come to have future meetings and further recommendations.
Yeah, I've written some things on there for later. So, okay, so everybody's happy with that? You've got a question? Yep.
So just one comment. The Regeneration Strategy, we've got the report. It was on the table when we came into the room. It would have been nice to have had that a little bit earlier. We'll talk about it when we get to it. Just a note that it...
I think it was originally circulated by email just before the last meeting, Chairman, but we've got paper copies around the table tonight.
Start again. Performance and budget, the highways performance report. Who's going to start with that today? Phil? Or Colin?
Chair, I thought how it works. You asked me questions.
Colin, do you want to go through it at all?
The report is as read, Chairman, and I think as Councillor Jordan said, we're all questions on that for this report. It's something that's produced on a quarterly basis. It's an attempt to have an overview reflection of the highway service.
Who'd like to?
Councillor Lee, and then Councillor Quinn.
Sorry, I don't want to add anything right now, but I'm struggling to hear everybody. So I don't know is the system quiet or can people speak into the mics a little bit better?
Sorry, Chair, I was being flippant, and thanks to Colin. It's a quarterly report. Lots of statistics in there, lots of data. We're happy to try and answer any questions if you have any on anything in that report or anything else on the PFI. Actually, tell you how good it's doing.
And Chairman, I would also say that normally, previously, this report would have gone to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee because they've shown a great interest in that. Corporate Scrutiny Committee said, we no longer want to look at this. We pass it over to the relevant Policy and Scrutiny Committee for their own consideration. And really, this is the first time that you've had such reports at this Policy and Scrutiny Committee, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question first? Are you happy with the report? Is there anything in there you want to draw our attention to? No. At least you're honest.
You bastard.
Councillor Quirk and then Councillor Ward.
Do something nice. overall, I actually think they're not doing a bad job. But one of the real issues that they get blamed for a lot is the total mess that white fibre are actually making of our streets and pavements. And that's not actually down to Island Roads. And if you talk to people from Island Roads, I haven't done so recently, but I have quite a lot in the past, and they are totally frustrated in that white fibre, certainly earlier on, were saying they were going to do stuff at dates, they were phasing their work around it, and then white fibre weren't doing it on time and their works were being delayed. Is that still the case?
Thank you, through you, Chair. White fibre are on an improvement notice, Councillor Quirk, and have been for quite a long time. There are numbers of issues. We try to work in partnership. It's difficult. They, as a utility, have a right to come and dig up the roads and pavements, as you know. We try and schedule it. We've tried to not surface pavements where we are aware that they're coming in to lay their cabling, and when they've done their remedial work, well, their backfill and finishing it off, and potentially remedial work, we hope that it's an area where we can come along and finish off. Island Roads can finish off in a new finish for the pavements. Doesn't happen all the while, unfortunately, but it's happening where as best we can. The road closures, I know in Sandown you've had some issues. We've had them in Ryde. They're difficult. Sometimes they're exaggerated and exasperated by other utility companies. Our other good friend, Southern Water, who turn up and dig the pavement up at will, and in Ryde we've had Southern Electric who tend to do it as well, causing havoc. Whilst we manage and hold Island Roads to account, there is evidence that they're delivering as best they can the management of the white fibre contract. I'm happy that they're doing it as best they can, but it's not a perfect situation by any means.
Yeah, I mean, that's was my point. I think Island Roads get blamed for a lot of stuff that isn't about them. And we had previously a presentation from Southern Water saying they were going to improve the infrastructure, but their infrastructure is failing regularly all over the place, and a very high proportion of the disruptions to the road network are actually caused by Southern Water. They say the right thing, but have we got any concrete plans from them that suggest they're actually doing the right thing?
Do you want to speak about the water?
Well, at the moment we haven't seen anything. Obviously, Southern Water themselves have brought in a new chief executive who obviously is on a mandate of making further investment improvements, etc. So I think it's watch this space really and see what improvements they are actually going to make in that regard. Just coming back to Councillor Jordan's point, in that one of the major disruptions recently was in Ryde, and that was as a result of the white fibre works, but then it was Southern Gas Networks that came in to do emergency works. So it is the network operators, they come in to do emergency works, and we, Island Roads, I think, do a reasonable job in actually accommodating that as much as they possibly can to try and reduce congestion at those times.
If and when we do get something positive from Southern Water about improvements to the infrastructure that they promise when they presented to Scrutiny previously, can Scrutiny be notified of that and have a presentation on what they're actually proposing, please?
Yes, I think what we're doing as a council, as council staff, we're actually coordinating lots of areas where Southern Water are involved. So the other particular issue is the infrastructure in sewage management and the other aspects of that as well. So our intention would be, as a council as a whole, to coordinate that, and obviously any information that will be coming forward would be something that Scrutiny could look at in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. Councillor Ward?
Actually, I'd just like to add to Councillor Jordan's report about white fibre work. I met the CEO at a social function last week, and I put this to her. I said, "What the hell is going on?" You know, he said, "Oh, don't." They've had tremendous problems with subcontractors and things like that. Not only not doing the work properly, but actually making mistakes. So it had to go back and be redone again. He said, we are behind schedule. There's no doubt about that. He said, we're trying to get back onto schedule as best we can. But we have problems that effectively are outside of our control until it goes wrong and we realise it has gone wrong. So I just wanted to add that, you know, that it's the problems are across the board, really. The question I wanted to ask was about let's call it St Mary's Roundabout project. And one of the things that when we were considering the project was the flow of traffic down to the roundabout here. What's the name of it? I've just forgotten. Coppins Bridge, yeah. And it was the intention to review that element of it as time passed. And I note that the traffic build up in the outside lane at times, only with rush hours, is quite long. But what I have recognised is that it clears pretty quickly as well. So you're not sat there for hours like you used to be. And I just wondered, you know, has that sort of review taken place? No, okay. Yeah.
Okay. As you know, just to add to that, the traffic moved from the inside lane to the outside lane for what, but that seems to have eased other problems off the expressway, as you know, and I expect most of us know. So whilst the problems move to the outside, it does move away quicker. It's at busy times, it's busy. It looks, you know, it looks busy. But too many cars. See, we've got too many cars, I'm afraid.
Councillor Deaver.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the frustrations I've had with Island Roads and getting any information about highways in general is I've been waiting for the District 2 list of proposed TROs that supposedly come in since being elected in May. Each time I've asked about it, it's next month. Oh, it's next month. Is there any clarity on why that keeps slipping? And do we have any information on a date when these districts proposed TROs will be available?
Okay, so thank you, Joe. The TR reviews being conducted, as you know, or partially anyway, and there are some schemes coming forward. I think there's about 9 coming forward. We put a pause at Cabinet for a review, a quick review on a couple of them, but we paused them all just to make it easier and simpler. Essentially, I'll repeat what I said. I don't think it's this committee, but another committee. I did send out an email a couple of Sundays ago about the capacity of our contracts management team, which has been decimated by serious illness of some of our staff, and a difficulty in recruiting staff to the required roles that we have, particularly civil engineering. So there's a general pressure on us delivering anything, which is why I asked you all to try and put your questions to Island Roads rather than to our contracts management team. But it's essentially we're behind on it because of that. We're working hard on that, and there's some good news on some of our staff in terms of their health, which is better. But there's no a return to work for is not a fast process. At recruitments, there are some movements on recruitment, but it'll take us weeks rather than days to get these people into place and inducted. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jordan. Just a comment that we talked about this process, about the TROs and about the safety register about 2 years ago. I think Councillor Ward will remember this. We carried out a review at that time, and at that time there were over 500 applications for TROs across the island. I think that number it grows every week, every month, every year. So therefore we have to do the degree of prioritisation. Now, you will possibly be aware that there are some TROs from Cowes coming through, from East Cowes and West Cowes, coming through in the next Cabinet meeting, which we'll be looking at. And we will be endeavouring to work through the highest priority ones in terms of the way that we prioritise them at the moment. But the difficulty we've got is managing that sheer number of applications, because I think everybody quite rightly, no matter where they live, they think their TRO is important, because obviously it's affecting their daily lives and it's affecting what they perceive as a safety of where they happen to live. It's just that we've got to do that exercise across the whole island and make that judgment as to finite resources and how we can manage those.
Sorry, can I just make a follow-up point?
Yeah.
That's really useful. Thank you both. I think my point is not necessarily about the. I appreciate the constraints we've got and the staffing issues, and I'm glad that's been getting better at the moment. I think it's just for the thing I'm hearing from residents is the frustration of not knowing what's on that list, essentially. So I'm trying to explain to them what is and what isn't, and there's not a lot of clarity there. So it's just that point would be good to communicate.
So as Colin's explained, that it's historical, this list. It's had a number of reincarnations. Safety asset register it started out as. Essentially what happened was Island Roads maintained the list, and when a town or parish council applied for a TRO or a change in the highways network, it just got put on the list. This list at one time, 6 years ago, was 1600. It's just enormous. And there were schemes on, well, they were never going to be done, Ian, at all. And so people were sat in expectation. We've done it. We've put our TRO request on the list, and it will get done. Well, some of it was never going to get done. So what we did, we implemented a list of based on safety first. So the priorities of safeties. Now we haven't conveyed that, and we constantly talk about maybe even cancelling the list and starting again because it's just unmanageable. But at the moment, it's done on a safety basis. We're not conveying that. You're right, Joe. It's up for discussion, that really. I think we can cause as much concern by people by saying this is the first thing that happens is when we say we're going to do this TR, you're going to say in Newport, why is Newport not getting done? Or Ian will say, why is this in Sandown not getting done? And we'll get into this sort of inter-town argument. And as Colin said, we're trying to manage the whole island. So we've got to go on this safety first in terms of our money, because also we've got a finite budget. Can't just deliver everything that you'll ask for. Thank you.
Anybody else before? I thought I saw somebody over here. No. So back to you, Councillor Quack.
In terms of the TROs, I assume that there's a restriction in both terms of budget and capacity to produce the TROs. Will that be partially addressed when you get back to full complement of staff? And the second thing is, relating to that, is the town and parish councils may well actually think that their scheme that's important to them is actually worth paying for, and so is that an option that we can look at? That I think there's one in Shanklin I can think of that everyone thinks it's a major safety thing in Shanklin, but it doesn't seem to register on an island basis, and so there must be some really awful things going on around the island if this one isn't a safety scheme. But the town and parish councils may be willing to fund some of that. So is that something that we can build in? And the other question, earlier in the year, Councillor Jordan and myself and Cycle White had a walk down some of the main cycleways, and subsequent to that, all the brambles that were coming right across the thing at face level, and that was all cleared, and thank you very much, that was brilliant. It was done very quickly, really good. For next year, can we ensure that that's Island Roads are scheduling that in at the right time, and it's not once the cycleways become impassable that they're cut back, but they're actually trimmed back to make them passable for the whole year, because we're encouraging people to cycle, but actually it was impossible to cycle from the bay to Newport along the cycleway because there were dozens of brambles right across the pathway at face level.
First thing, absolutely really interested if town and parishes want to pay for work in their areas. I'm interested in discussing that with town and parishes. We did do it in Freshwater many years ago, helped them build out their town centre, which worked very well. Haven't done very many since. Yeah, why not? Because one of our constraints, apart from our capacity, is finances. If you come up with the money, why wouldn't we talk to you? So, yeah, we'll talk to you. I don't know about the bramble cuts. We've cut it once for you. That'll do, Chris, for a little while. I don't know. And we're trying to deliver that for you. For members, that's they're prepared to an initiative on parking and the subsequent losses for the Isle of Wight Council. They're prepared to cover the costs of those losses. So that's an interesting idea for us. Actually, we'd be prepared to possibly consider other town and parishes that came forward with that idea, but the costs have got to be covered.
Yeah, I went to that presentation. It was very interesting. Yeah, very good. Councillor Garrett, nice to see you.
And indeed you, Chair, and apologies for my lateness and potential apologies for my earliness in leaving as well. Councillor Quirk, I think, was also asking about the restoration of capacity on completing TROs. How many full-time equivalent officers do we have working on TROs?
It's probably between 1 and 2.
Probably.
Well, there's a manager who also has responsibility for transport, so buses, trains, and other matters, as well as TROs. And then we have an officer that carries out TRO work, but also has other responsibilities. So it's a very small team. If we were to look at Councillor Quirk's suggestion of developing town and parish councils, we could possibly increase capacity, but we'd have to build that into our longer term planning, which we would intend to look at.
What I'd suggest to you, this is an area in which a small amount of investment in terms of a small increase in full-time equivalents could actually pay off great dividends, couldn't it? In terms of reducing that list and reducing the frustration from the public and indeed from councillors as well, because it's half a full-time equivalent would be increasing. Let's take your probably to mean 1.5 FTEs, put a 0.5 on that, and you've increased that capacity by 33%. Presumably, that could increase the amount of work that would be done by a similar proportion. I hope you see my line of argument actually here. I'm kind of directing it probably more through to the cabinet member who will then be making budget bids at some point. That actually here is an area where a small increase in capacity could have a really significant impact on the positive performance of the authority, particularly if you can bring the town and parish and community councils in with you on that. And maybe there is an opportunity to build a case for at least a fixed term uplift in that capacity. With that narrative in mind, though, how resilient do you think then probably 1.5 or whatever it is full-time equivalents is at the moment, because given what we're hearing, the area is not resilient. It can be struck down, sadly, by personal circumstances of people's health. So how do we deal with that issue of resilience otherwise?
Thank you, Andrew. The team in itself, I'll go right back to the beginning here. The team in itself, this PFI contract was a contract that was delivered as a self-managing contract. It may be unique in the UK in that sense, but most of the other PFIs are managed by a contracts management team from the local authority. We decided to allow the contractor to manage and measure their own performance and then tell us. What that meant was that from the outset, the structure of the contracts management team was tiny. And tiny in the sense that a £600 million contract had in April 2013 something like 6 or 8 people, of which 2 were admin staff. One was a civil engineer. That was from day one of the contract. Fundamentally, this contract is flawed. Fundamentally, there's no such thing as a self-managing contract, because the contractor has no checks and balances, because we don't have that capacity in a broad sense to deliver it. So it's specifically about your question. If we were to, how can we protect against one member of staff going ill or sick or off work? Can't. And what we'll do when he's off, won't do the work. We'd need 2 people to do that, or 3 people. I would guess I wouldn't be far out with a member of staff being around £40,000, £35,000 total cost. But of course, what you would do is not only have the cost of the member of staff, the extra member of staff, is the extra work that they generate to take out of the reduced budget that you're trying to get all the work delivered by. So you would quickly accelerate to a point where, instead of capacity being the issue and sustainability, money would be the main issue. It's still an issue now, money, but it would be the main issue that we couldn't deliver. And just to finally say that when we talk about TROs, it may not just be a yellow line painted and accrued into the contract, you know, as a cost, but it's a small cost. A drop curb's £4,000. If you have a controlled crossing, could be £80,000. And these are all requests from town and parish council on this list. And some of them are safety requests, believe it or not. And for example, in Newport, you may have requirements on disability to have drop curbs, because disabled people need to get around the town centre and elsewhere. And it's huge cost. With our budget, we would run out of money before the end of the contract period for our new member of staff. So it is a balance between the two. I absolutely take your point, Andrew, and thank you for that. It's a pointing observation of where we are, but it is a balance that our staff make about our levels of staffing. But fundamentally, a contract that's flawed, and we should never have entered into a contract that was self-managing. We should have entered into a contract that allowed us to manage that contract with a proper contracts management team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Absolutely.
It just strikes me that it might be better to spend the money rather than doing the implementation of the TROs, but on the staff to facilitate them, and then test out how much town and parish councils are enthusiastic about the things that they're asking for, by getting them to pay for the actual implementation. And you know, if you've got the infrastructure, you can cope with the implementation if someone else pays for it, and they will do if they think it's important enough.
Colin, did you want to answer?
Yes, just a point for Councillor Quirk and people, that I think what Councillor Jordan was saying as well is that we've got a capital budget, which is finite. Yes, we could introduce more capital from town and parish councils, but then we need that capacity within the revenue budget for people to actually be able to draw up the schemes, work with Island Roads to draw up the schemes, and then deliver the schemes. So the capital wouldn't be an issue if you're talking about town and parish councils contributing to that, but we still need that to build that capacity for people to actually deliver that work. And that's the difficulty we're in. Just coming back to Councillor Jordan's point, that we have increased significantly the number of staff in that client management team. The client management team is only part of it. What we're talking about in terms of TROs and in terms of transport management and transport policy is also a responsibility of the highways management team. We've increased significantly over the past 2 to 3 years the capacity there. But I have to say, as a corporate director and someone who looks at the council as a whole, I've got to look at what budget requirements I've got in the sense of what does the rest of the council require. So I can go along with what Councillor Garrett's saying in terms of additional resource, but I've got to put my bid in for that alongside everybody else that is probably saying a similar thing in lots and lots of other service areas. So we just got to balance that out, really. We are trying what we can, and the points that you make, Councillor Quirk, about introducing town and parish councils and being able to increase capacity as a result of that, we are looking at it and we will continue to.
Just if you just do it as a more bang for bucks, that it's just 50%. You know, you have to join funds, and so you pay 50%. The council, local council, but from the council side, you can via some off into your staff budget because that isn't your capital budget. So there are ways that you can be creative and get around the issue and still increase the capacity and what you can do.
And we're going to draw to a close soon, but Susie, sorry, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm slightly concerned about the idea of asking parish councils if they really want it, they can contribute, because I've got 4 of the smallish parish councils with very small precepts that do have what I would consider to be serious safety issues. So I understand the reasoning and agree with Councillor Quirk, but I would have concerns about that. I'm also, please forgive me, this is the first committee I've attended, so I'm playing catch up a little bit here. I don't know if I'm hearing that perhaps the process is slightly flawed around TROs. I mean, if it's such a huge list and you haven't got the capacity and you haven't got the staff, do we need to do something completely radical and go back to parish councils and say, how many of these do you actually still want?
We did do that. We went back and said, give us, I think it was your top 3 or top 5. We did do that in an effort to reduce that list.
Right, thank you. Forgive me. As I say, I'm playing catch up, so thank you.
So drawing this to a close, how long ago did that happen, Councillor Jordan? That going back to?
Was it under your watch here? It was about 4 years ago. Thank you.
So does that need to be done again, or how often does that get done?
Just comment quickly on that process, because Newport were allowed 10 because of it was such a big place. but what we found was the list wasn't actually complete that we were given, because we knew there were loads more requests that had gone in from members that weren't on the actual list we were given. So there is something wrong with the process, but I think maybe that's been ironed out now, hopefully.
When we got the new head of highways in, she said, I just cannot believe the number of requests we get for such a small area. There's people asking for things all the time. She said, all the other authorities I've been in, we might get 1 or 2 a week or a month. Here, they get them every day. She's like, I can't believe it.
So drawing this to a close now, what I'd like to see maybe is a report on that part of the process, how that works for next time. Would that be okay?
I think we can do that, Chairman, but I don't want to guarantee next time because of the current capacity issues we've got and the current levels of sickness we've got in the team and the size of the agenda overall. But I will commit to coming back with a report the date to be confirmed, if that's okay.
If that's absolutely fine, we'll put it on the work plan with a open-ended. Just before Councillor Jordan departs, the one question I've got is, because it came from corporate scrutiny, are we any nearer about getting an informal meeting with White Fibre and Island Roads?
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Chair.
It came from corporate scrutiny to come to this committee about White Fibre and Island Roads, as you spoke about earlier. We were going to have an informal meeting with them. Has anything happened?
That hasn't been set up yet, Chair.
Can we do that? When will that happen?
We'll do our best, Chair.
Yeah. When will that? When we hear?
I have no idea. It's down to White Fibre's availability.
Okay. And who's taking charge of that?
Well, that will be either myself or Colin.
When will we hear about that?
I think it's probably likely that we might want to do it in a formal session, that if you want to get White Fibre in and Island Roads, that you would do it in a formal way. Councillor Jordan and I have met White Fibre recently and talked about the concerns that members of the public have had, but we've also had certain assurances from them as well, in terms of they are making improvements against that improvement plan. So we can try and arrange a meeting whereby they come along to this meeting and have that conversation if you want that to happen.
With the greatest respect, that was asked for from corporate scrutiny to come to this committee, so we need to get that done. Okay, thank you. Everybody happy to note that report and move? Thank you. So moving on to the waste contracts performance.
Can I just bring in Natasha Dix, who's the strategic
Thank
manager?
you,
I think Councillor Bacon might want to say a few words to start with.
Councillor Jordan, thank you for your participation. Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you, Chair. The waste report is there. It's a technical report, a lot of data, and a few explanatory notes. And as with the report we've just heard, questions, I've got relevant people here, so questions can be forthcoming.
Who'd like to go first? Shall I ask a question first? Or Councillor Garrett, you've got to go soon. So.
If I may, Chair, so who checks everything's right on this? For example, that the justified miscollections are indeed justified miscollections. How do we check the quality control of the decisions being made there?
Shall I do it?
I think quite a lot of these questions are likely to be technical, so I would probably tend to defer to Natasha Dix on that, and I think this is one of those.
We, within the contract specification, have an extremely robust requirement for the miscollections to be handled in a very specific process. So all of the collection vehicles that we have an in-cab technology which has every single property listed. The crews have to, by exception, mark inside the in-cabs if a bin has not been presented on time, if it's contaminated, if the gates are locked, if they can't access it. So there's a number of exceptions that are reported. Those reports are seen live by the contact centre. So when anybody phones in to say their bins have been missed, they can see live where the trucks have been, where they haven't been, and if an exception has been reported. If a resident chooses to say, actually, I think that's wrong, I think they might have got the wrong property, I think that might have been next door and not me, then we review the CCTV footage from the cameras to make sure that those justified miscollections are truly justified and that we have a robust approach. And if there is ever an incident where we cannot find the appropriate CCTV footage, then we will not see it as a justified collection.
Can I just come in there, Chairman? We all know about bin collections and the bin services, that people are quite not forward in coming forward when there is a problem with them. So, as Natasha said, that customer feedback is a sure sign of when the performance isn't working. Plus, backed up by the CCTV, and backed up by lots and lots of performance indicators that we have to ensure that they're meeting those.
And has there ever been a case when you have looked from a contract management side of view that actually a decision has been questionable in a particular way that you have had to take action from a contract management point of view, and that and there has been some form of process improvement or whatever within that?
Yeah, there certainly have been many occasions over the last 7 years when mistakes are made. As I'm sure we all know, people are human, and it's very easy to make a mistake, to do the simple thing of having the wrong property number. Or in some instances, we have found through our robust management and trawling through the data that comes to us that occasionally a driver will accidentally lock out an entire road as not presented rather than the individual property. So we are regularly reviewing that data and then regularly doing lesson learn sessions with our service provider to ensure that everyone has regular training in the crews, but equally everyone within the contact centre understands the systems that they're looking at, the processes they're looking at, and that the contract management team are thoroughly and robustly going through that data on a monthly basis.
Anybody else? I'd like to know, with methane being so terrible for the atmosphere, how are we doing on the compost side of things?
On food waste collections, we do collect a significant amount of food waste a year, around 5,000 tonnes. However, we do know from our recent composition studies that we've done that we still have 22% of what goes out in our general waste bins is still food waste, which is something that we really do need to work on as a community, as well as through our messaging as a local authority, as food waste going anywhere other than to a proper composting facility where it is the methanes are captured and it is turned to a compost is not appropriate. I think one of the key messages coming out of that for us is just trying to help everyone remember that we have a weekly composting service for food, and that if you use that service, then it will ensure that your food waste is composted.
If I could add to that, I'm very much hoping that's going to be one of the drives and things we emphasise and try and get across as part of the Mission Zero process that's coming up in relation to the climate change strategy. It's an important issue.
Absolutely, and maybe with Christmas coming up as well. Are we doing anything on the media about it?
Yes, I'm just at the moment going through the campaign plans for Christmas. We will be doing a significant amount of media, and a lot of that is also very much focused on ensuring that we have zero non-essential waste to landfill, which we're quite proud at the moment that we're running at 96% diversion from landfill rate, which is an exceptional position to be in.
That's brilliant, yeah. Everybody else happy with? Lever, sorry.
Yeah, nothing too significant. Just out of curiosity, what happened in July? July for the missed collections. There was just a little bump.
That would be the start of the summer holidays.
Okay.
Well, what tends to happen is a lot of the homes that suddenly become full, second homes and other areas that have not been presenting waste for a very long time because they're not there, arrive for the summer holidays, and the crews sometimes miss them because the bins just haven't been presented in a normal location. So we do tend to see at the beginning of the summer holidays there will be an increase in those missed collections just because there's properties suddenly being in use that weren't in use.
Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you again, Chair. On the FOI requests, I see there were, 7 during July to September period. Is that on the low or high side? And also, were they all responded to within the statutory time?
That is an average amount that we normally have around that many FOI requests. Many of those are from industry press or from people who are looking for sales information to try and find a way to sell us things that we don't currently have, but we do currently have. We do respond to all of them within 20 days, and we're confident on our processes for FOIs.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. What is a near miss report? I mean, what sort of incidents occur that are reported there?
So near miss reporting is part of our and Amy's partnership approach to reducing the risk of any accidents happening to any of our members of staff or public. So everyone who works for Amy and everyone who works within the contract management team, should they see something that could potentially be an accident or is a minor triple fall that could have been significantly worse is logged within the health and safety risk logging system, so that we're really keeping a good track of potential risks and ensuring that those are reviewed before they become actual accidents.
Councillor Christensen.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking at the service requests, the most of them are staying quite steady across there, but there's difference in the joining the garden service. It went up quite a lot, and so is that quite new? I don't know how long we've been doing that, and was it due to advertising that or anything? So I don't know if you could give us some more information about the garden service figures.
Sorry, if you could just let me know which table you're looking at. I'm working through lots of pages.
Which page? From the service requests, which are 33 to 37, just looking at each month, it tells us how many people have asked to join the garden service, and then suddenly it goes really down. It's a huge amount. Like in June, there was 88 requests to join the garden service. And then it goes down to 3 the month after. And I'm just wondering why it's suddenly really popular, they're not, and whether that's due to promoting it or...
Sorry, I just haven't printed the appendix out, that's fine. Sorry, I'm just looking at the appendix there. No, I don't know what that is. It does go down to 0. So the garden waste service opens, as you know, in February, sometimes January, for renewals. And that process remains open to mid-March. And what we tend to find following the point that we close that and roll out the service for the year commencing 1st of April is an awful lot of people that we have communicated to say, please renew your service or you may lose your service, don't realise they're going to lose their service until the service is gone. And so those requests will start coming back in again. What we have worked really hard to do this year is to optimise all of the garden waste rounds so that we don't get to a position where we have to say no to those people coming back on the service, and we have actually managed to get an extra 425 people back into the service who had forgotten to renew this year because of those coming through. And then by August we have just worked our way through them all.
Anybody else? No? So noted. Happy to note down? Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Put my glasses on. So on to the average speed camera motion from full council that was asked to be spoken about at this committee. Who would like to have a talk about? Would you like to introduce that one? What you found, or do you want me to do that?
Mobile average speed cameras. We found out there was a trial done in Anfield, actually, which is in Hampshire, back in 2011, but we failed so far to find out whether that was continued, and we've also failed to find out whether any other mobile average speed cameras actually operate in the UK. We don't think they do, so the sort of question of mobile average speed cameras is not really something I would say that we can consider further at this moment in time. The technology might improve, they might bring those particular elements in. In terms of what we want to do with that resource, we'd rather spend that on a speed review, which we started during the last administration, and actually start to look at speed within the island, look at perception, look at what people feel about it, look at what measures can be done to actually tackle it. So I think that would be a better way, in our view, of actually trying to manage speed on the island and trying to look at ways in which we can deal with it in the right way. We have recently taken on, as the highway service, the role of road safety from the fire service, which is now the fire service is part of Hampshire Fire and Rescue. We've taken on that role. We've just appointed a road safety officer. So we are looking at reintroducing and reinvigorating our role in road safety, which obviously has implications for speed being one of the main factors.
Very much. Has anybody got anything they would like to add? Thank you, Councillor Quett.
Just an observation. that if you look at deaths on the roads on the island, it's almost entirely the occupants of motor vehicles. It's not pedestrians being run over, it's motor crashes, and an alarmingly large number of single vehicle incidents, which suggests that maybe speed is one of the major factors. And I understand the issues around how you deal with it, but it is something that we should continue to address as to how we do control speed. And if it's not with speed cameras, how are we going to do it? Because that is an issue. We have a disproportionate number of road deaths compared to the national average. It isn't in when you'd expect it to be in the summer when we've got lots more people on the roads. That's not when it happens. It's in the winter. So it's road conditions and probably inappropriate speed for the road condition. But there is something there that is the island is particularly bad at, and we need to look at somehow to try and do something about it.
Thanks. It's the opposite. The opposite, but firstly, that's exactly why we're doing the speed review. That's the work for that very reason, to try and understand it. The motion that you're talking about is, as Colin has explained, we're unable to find this equipment to install it anyway. So we rather feel that the money that was set aside in the budget is better spent on our speed review, which is due to finish next March, and a report through to Cabinet around next October, November, so in about a year's time. So the supplementary, actually there's about 812 kilometres of roads on the Isle of Wight. 2/3 are non-major roads. 1/3 is major, roughly.
Yeah.
Wasn't the money for the cameras capital?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Councillor.
Was it capital?
Wasn't the money for the cameras in the capital budget?
I believe I was told it was a budget a line in the budget originally.
I think it was because it's a one-off, yeah. So it was flexible whether it was capital or revenue, because we'd have to have a revenue amount to deal with speed cameras anyway, because a large proportion of that cost of speed cameras is not just about installing them, it's actually about administering them, and it's actually about administering the fines, etc., etc. So yes, you could argue it's capital because it was a one-off sum, but the capital would have only covered the actual equipment itself. It wouldn't have covered the rest of the cost. And arguably, mobile speed cameras, do they actually count as capital? So yes.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. This proposal came through in my time for mobile speed cameras, and I know the head of highways looked into this quite thoroughly. And yes, they do exist, but they're not as mobile as you think they are. Yes, you can move them, but you have to virtually, rebuild them. They have to be recalibrated and things like that. They're not just something you can put in this road for one day and see what happens and whiz it down to another road. It didn't work like that at all. And I know her view was that probably we were better off funding the police to do speed cameras, but I don't think the police were interested.
Colin.
Just on that point about road accidents and motorist accidents, that the safest roads in the country are motorways, which is people wouldn't think that, well, look at the speed they're going, etc., etc. But because of the way that motorways are managed and the way that people behave on motorways, they're the safest roads. Urban roads are the next safest because of the street lighting and because of the constraints that are put on vehicles within an urban environment that slows them down. And the worst number of accidents are on rural roads, rural A roads, rural B roads, and as the Isle of Wight is predominantly rural, that reflects in some of the accident statistics.
Sorry, I meant B roads rather than A roads. Sorry about that. Would it be a good idea then to put on the forward plan for this committee, the work plan, for whenever it happens? But now we've got to have the road safety officer and the speed review. I know it's started, but it's going to be a while, like you said, for that. So maybe that's what we need to have a look down the road in that direction. How do we feel about that?
Yes. Do we have an idea when the review is likely to be completed?
It's due to be completed next March. The data and outcomes of that data will be contained in a report that will come to Cabinet around October, November next year. So about a year's time, although the actual review will finish around March. Caveated, of course, that's the target date.
No, I mean, if we put it onto the forward plan with a provisional date of, when it's or when available, that it comes on, that it should come back to this committee.
In terms of our Cabinet, it will go on the forward plan for our Cabinet at the appropriate time, which will be around next April. For your own work plan, I have no idea. That's up to you. What you do.
We will look at it in October, just before it goes to, or about the same time.
Yeah, it's tying in the meetings. So corporate scrutiny will certainly have a meeting where that can tie into.
They decided they didn't want to look.
If it doesn't tie in the final report that's going to Cabinet, can we have an interim report for the last meeting of this count of this group?
Interim report of the speed review.
Well, you're going to know. You're going to know what's happening. This is the right place to consider it. I think.
Will come in October.
Consider the corporate scrutiny.
October, November next year. It will come here.
Yeah.
Yeah. To this committee. Yeah. Are we happy with that recommendation? It goes into our work plan. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. So if I was understanding the director correctly, and having in mind the motion that went to full council, which was about proceeding with the development of a business case, the recommendation, if we made one out of this committee, is no, do not proceed with the business case. In terms of what full council was asking at that time, because there isn't the evidence to suggest that the technology is available such that we could build that business case. Notwithstanding whether or not we might think, were these things available, they would be good things. It's just that the evidence, it just isn't there to support anything that could be even approach a robust business case. Would that be the case?
Advice to me would be yes, because there are mobile speed cameras, and we see them all the time in the back of police vehicles or at the roadside. It's the mobile average speed cameras, because you have to do 2 points over a distance, and there's all the complications about that, about how do you set up that in a temporary basis. So yeah, in one word, yes, I would say I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Garrett.
So in the sense, a recommendation should come from this committee that having heard that this has been looked into, that there isn't sufficient evidence for Cabinet to be urged to proceed with a business case on this. The other, and I would agree with that anyway, given the position I took at budget earlier this year. One thing I'm concerned about is just the length of time the speed review is taking place. So it seems to be going on for a long time, and seems to be going on for yet more of a long time. Is there a chance that we'd be given just what the work plan on of that? So what actually will be completed by March 22, and what will be the workload from March 22 to October 22? That means it will take 5 months before we get a report to Cabinet.
I think we can bring along the scope of what that review will entail, yes.
That earlier.
Yeah. Chairman, we could ask for that to be circulated outside the committee. Yeah.
That would certainly be helpful, because it's not clear to me from the questions that I have asked whether all the data has now actually been collected, because so that it is still possible to say, have you collected data on this on a particular road, and urge for a road to be for data to be collected upon it. Is that the case?
I think, Councillor Garrett, the target date to finish all of the monitoring is next March. I do think, and I'm having this in other areas, that we need to be very careful as councillors how far down into operational detail we get, and we are seeing councillors wanting to intercede into highly detailed operational plans for roadworks, for example, at Coppins Bridge, as it happens, and I am mindful that we are becoming too operational rather than the policy of what we're doing. So I take your point. Our plan is next March. Our plan is to develop the report from that raw data to a full report for Cabinet around October, November next year. I think the detail of that, if we certainly can let this committee have the scope of that. I think we really have to be mindful of going into detail. People who've scoped this out are not in this room tonight. They will have scoped it in a professional way for reasons that I can't explain to you. And diving into some of that professional detail starts to get very tricky, in my opinion.
That's a helpful answer, but through you, Chair, when those people who scope reports are those people who also put themselves up for election and are accountable to the public, who ask questions about what's happening, then I think then I will take a more note of what you've just said. I think there is a case for elected members being able to know whether or not the scope has meant that all roads on the island have had speed monitoring on them or not. And I don't think it's unreasonable for us to ask those questions, because we are asked those questions by the people who place us here. And I think it is a matter of accountability that we should be able to say, it's not for us to say this road will be monitored on this particular date, but we need to be certain that we can say to a member of the public that the road you have inquired about, I can confirm to you, because I have made inquiries, that road has either had data collected or will have data collected. I don't want to engage in a kind of argument about that, but I hope you see the point about the accountability and the response of elected members to the public.
Absolutely accept that, Councillor Garrett, and the scope is something we would be absolutely prepared and able to give you. As you say, let's not go too further into the balance between our roles as councillors and operational detail.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Jordan. So your recommendation is to not have a business case. Would you like to?
Well, if I could move that having heard the evidence that has been gained, no, what would it be? It would, given that there isn't sufficient evidence to support going forward with developing a business case, then we would recommend to Cabinet that they would not so do.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Jordan, again, bus service improvement plan. I believe this has gone through to government now, is it?
Thank you, Chair. Again, you have the draft report. This is essentially, is impose the right word? Government suggested that we should enter into a bus improvement plan with our bus transport providers, and that having done that, we would enter into an enhanced partnership with those bus operators in March next year, March 2022. So the improvement plan, as you see it, contains a lot of the wish lists of the operators, some of which I'm sure are highly contentious and may never ever see the light of day, but they've seen the light of day here, and you can see what Southern Vectis would like in this improvement plan. That will translate at some point into an enhanced partnership. The good news with this, of course, is that there's a £3 billion funding pot by government, which we will be bidding for, and hopefully successful in terms of substantial funding to deliver some of the plans that we are going to have. And some of those plans will be more frequent services, real-time information, better bus shelters, perhaps more routes more frequently, single ticketing, simple information about ticketing, and generally improved bus times. And the idea of this, of course, is to get people out of their cars and onto public transport. One of the targets, of course, is to when you improve, one hopes, when you improve the number of users on buses and public transport generally, the economies of scale come down, and you would hope to see a reduction in fares, because more people on a bus travelling round is more efficient for the operator. When you see buses that are empty costing the same as if they were full, you can see some of the reasons why the costs are as they are. But so the intention is to try and work on that plan. It's catch-22, make the service and the infrastructure better, people will rely upon it more, prices will come down. That's the theory.
I'll just ask one question to open to the floor. So when would we bring this back to this committee to review how it's going? Because obviously we're still at the beginning, really, aren't we? So when would you envisage us to bring it back?
I think, Chair, possibly for the enhanced partnership is the next stage of this. This is mainly a wish list from Southern Vectis, yeah, around March next year, when we have to, I think it's the end of March, we have to have signed up to the enhanced plan.
Councillor Clerk.
If you don't ask, you don't get. So, I mean, it's absolutely right to sort of put the wish list in there and go for it and bid for it. I totally agree with that. There's a catch-22 here. The buses are so expensive that people don't use them because it's actually cheaper, even with the fairly high parking charges. It's still cheaper to drive into Newport from the Bay than it is to because if you've got a car, you've already paid the insurance, you've already paid the road tax. It's the variable cost of your petrol and servicing, and so it doesn't cost you £4.50 each way in petrol. So there's a somehow you've got to address that, and there's got to be a sort of a step change, and it's that transition of dropping, not waiting for people to come because more people have come and the fares go down. Fares have got to come down to attract more people, and maybe that's something to build into the presentation to government, how you can attract more people, and it's the phasing of that I think is really important to attract people.
Some guidance, Councillor Quirk, from government for the funding be creative. Be creative. Give us creative ideas, and you can have the money to deliver it. What they're not looking for is we want to put up 10 bus shelters or that kind of stuff. Single ticketing is interesting. More frequency, more routes. So the discussions that one imagines, the discussions that will go on, perhaps the smaller buses, for example, and the buses want to move towards non-carbon fuel. Of course, that's not part of the bus plan, but we are talking to some Vectis about potential hydrogen vehicles.
Supplementary. I mean, just an observation. I came in on the bus this evening. Door to door, it took me an hour. Door to door in the car, it takes 20 minutes. Now, you can live with that, but if it's costing you twice as much and and going back, some of the services, well, in order to keep Ventnor on the map, we stop the number 2, which is the popular route, and keep the number 3 going at night, and it then takes an hour and a half to get home. And so you have to do something about the practicalities. 2.5 hours bus travel to come to a meeting is a bit excessive. And until you can do something about the cost and the availability, I think you're pushing water uphill.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. And you'll see in the report also of the wish list some of the extensive ideas to make buses much more reliable and more efficient. And some of those are highly unpalatable. For example, they would like us to take all parked cars off of bus routes. Now, you can imagine how we would set about doing that, and yet that's one of their aspirations. And they say to us, if you can do that, we will make our buses more reliable. We'll tell you what time they leave Ryde and what time they pull into Newport, notwithstanding accidents and so on. So there are some hidden big boulders in this document that you need to study very carefully.
That would actually sort some of the Shanklin TPOs.
Remove or relocate on-street parking. Oh dear.
It's extensive, Councillor Quirk, and you're absolutely right. It's a big step change. It's a big step change coming for all of us from that have vehicles, moving from carbon fuel vehicles to electric, to put in that infrastructure also. These are huge changes facing us. And we're investing in our infrastructure. The Ryde interchange is not unlinked to this scheme of buses, this enhanced plan, making connectivity for people travelling on and off the island and through the island more attractive, more easier, getting buses more efficient. But it's a big step change. You're absolutely right. And until you and I, well, you came on the bus, but those of us that use vehicles finally give up the ghost on their vehicles. You're right, it's an uphill battle. Absolutely is.
I was going to say Claire then, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Councillor Luciani. Yes, Bill, just on that, talking about, I've seen the sort of 10 commitments here, and commitment 9 was trialling innovative value for money approaches. That's what we really want to see. I think, being Green Party, we really want to see people being encouraged. It's got to be a bit of a carrot to get people on these buses. We can't just bash them. We want to really encourage that. And I know, living rurally, that obviously getting on the buses is something that's a lot of people don't do. And we have tried that in Chale and Knighton before, doing a kind of £1 fare. And we'd like to see some of those coming back to encourage people to go on it, because I think we would. People they've realised now that we've got to make this change, but they still need a lot of help. So, please.
Claire, and sorry. And until we put in our bid and know what kind of money we've got, to how that works across the whole network of bus services, we won't know. But one might hope that some of our discussions would be on cost of fares. One might hope.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. During my time, we had discussions with the bus companies and things like that. We are between a rock and a hard place, quite frankly. Our fares are too expensive, but on the other hand, they're dealing with a comparatively high level of bus pass users, and they only get a small fee for those. They don't get a bus fare. So the people who are paying the full bus fare are sort of subsidising Southern Victors, if you like. So how do you deal with that? To be honest, we were talking about the size of buses. To them, it makes no difference whether you run a small bus or a big bus. Costs are the same. Okay, you run around an empty bus, costs are the same. But they get no income if they run around an empty bus, because the ridership is not there, and maybe the ridership is not there because the fares are too dear. So, you know, as I said before, they're between a rock and a hard place. And I think the only way we're going to resolve this is if the government subsidises bus fares for like they do in London. You know, it's great for London, not great for us. That's it.
Okay, so anybody else? So are we noting that one? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's improvement. So we're bringing that back then in May. Is that correct, Paul?
If it's your wish, Chairman,
Yeah.
and did you also want to bring in someone from bus company?
Yeah, so, Councillor Jordan, we were just wondering, when we bring it back in May, maybe we can speak to some of the partners. So maybe Southern Vectis, or see how they think about it and how we can improve it.
I think it'd be a very good idea for some vectors to come in and explain to you their ambitions and aspirations. Absolutely, yeah.
And
I'm sure they would come in.
yeah, maybe anybody else you think may be beneficial for us to, but Southern Vectis primarily.
Bus shooters, perhaps, yeah.
Well, I didn't know if they, because obviously the bus improvement is going to talk to everybody else on the island as well, so yeah. Thank you very much. So, housing strategy action plan. Who's introducing that one? Is it Ashley? Or are you going to do that?
I'm going to use that actually because for quite a while this evening, and I think it's only right to use the benefit of this knowledge and input. So what I'm going to do. Oh, what a blow. See. Yeah, what I want to say is I will be using Mr. Curzon and indeed probably Colin Rowland as well, because the housing strategy is quite a meaty thing to go through. You can pass your questions to me and I will deal with them anyway. But what I'm going to say is that we've taken on part of the strategy from the previous administration because it's sound. Now, you don't throw everything out the door when you come in, but what you do is build on the positives and those areas that the new administration aspires to. So let's get it right that we are utilising some of the aims and objectives of the previous administration, along with our own aspirations, and which we hope will solidify and take things forward in an appropriate manner. I could talk about the housing company, etc., but what I want to try and do is talk about the multitude of areas that we're going to cut into with regards to housing provision. And I really feel that the opportunities are there. There's been a lot of work done prior to my appointment, but there's been a hell of a lot done since as well. So I would say that, you know, and no doubt Councillor Jones-Evans have mentioned something about it on her regeneration paper in a moment. But what I'm going to say is that this is very, very positive, and there's so many areas in here, as I say, that it's difficult to pull down one or two. But what I would say is we're looking, and I go back to last evening's paper from full council when we were talking about the corporate plan, because I think that gives an indication as to where the new administration want to put some input and some effort. And we're looking at different tenures. We really want to bring forward rental accommodation, and let's get a fix on what affordable is for affordable on the Isle of Wight. We did touch on that last night, but we want to make sure that wherever possible, we bring back empty properties. Now, I think that was the aspiration across the chamber. It was across the chamber last evening and many evenings before, because quite honestly, we know that there are empty properties out there that we could utilise for our homeless. It's not just about building. It's not just about looking at brownfield or greenfield sites. Let's hope we don't look at greenfield sites, but let's hope that we stick with the brownfield. We've got some money to clean up 3 brownfield sites, which we've already said we're going ahead with. So we're very active within this strategy. And what I want to say is that we've got a battle on. We really have a battle on. It was aired last evening. It's been aired everywhere we go, whether it's corporate scrutiny, cabinet, tonight, full council. We know that we've got a battle with our housing needs, and indeed those empty properties, and those properties that we've got to build. And we're talking, within the strategy here, it says 300 within 3 years. Well, we know that's not going to cut the mustard anyway. We've got to be more ambitious. We've got to go even further. And I'm not just saying building 300 properties. As I said, I'm looking to utilise properties that are empty. We're looking at modular as well as traditional build, and so many other ways. I think that most of us within the chamber at within this moment in time are steeped in what the problems are, and possibly where we can go to try and alleviate the problems. We're never going to solve it all. We've got to, as I've got it here, 2,485 on our list. So that's what we're looking at, 2,485 on our list, 1,249 requiring 1 bedroom occupancy. Now, work out how many 1 bedroom units have been built of late, and we're not even going to touch the surface on that. So, as I say, if you look across the piece, we've got a problem. Because we're not going to get, if we look to developers to solve our problems, there's not going to be too many developers who are going to build 1 bedroom units, and that's for sure. I want to leave it there. I'm going to look along the row and ask if Colin would like to add to that, or even Ashley.
I know Councillor Jones-Evans would like to.
Pardon?
Councillor Jones-Evans would like to.
You're the chair.
Councillor Jones-Evans,
Thank you. Just want to say a couple of words, Deputy Leader, and then I'm happy to pass on to the experts sat behind me. Obviously, I did speak on this last night, and I'm not intending to repeat any of that, but we all understand that having a decent place to live is fundamental to people's well-being. So that's where we start. Look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, and that is, that's your basic. So this really underpins all this strategy. We are now with. I sit on the housing board. So part of Regen is what we do is to deliver housing where we can. And of course, we've been focusing. Regen focuses on our own land assets, which are quite challenging. Some of them, and as the Deputy Leader just said, we've been lucky enough to get £1 million to clear these 3 brownfield sites to enable them to be prepared for affordable housing, and that is an issue because brownfield sites are so difficult. They can be so difficult. They need, cleaning and all sorts of work to make them able to take housing for people. We're also still extricating ourselves out of the PSP, which was a partnership we went into 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, I think it was. So extra, because that was basically fruitless, and did not, well, well, it seemed quite good, and they changed the goal post halfway through, and it was not something the council could no longer be part of. So that wasted some time. But I just wanted to reassure you, we're having more and more. We've requested more frequent housing board meetings because of this crisis, and we are leaving no stone unturned. We're looking at absolutely every site that we have as a council. And we are prepared, as it says in the action plan. I'm not sure what page it's on, but it says, the council, we are prepared to intervene where we can, using our ability to borrow. And there's a business case in which we are doing, obviously, as the Deputy Leader just said about, the modular housing, bringing that forward for temporary housing for people, which will be of high quality though. We're not talking about, prefabs that, are low quality and people want to live in. We're talking about high quality places that can give people some temporary respite for their situation. No one saw what COVID was going to do to our housing market, and I think I think so. It's a good time now to reflect, because we've come a long way in a year and a half, and the market's completely changed. I think that it's a really good time for us now to reassess where we're at and reassess all of our land holdings, including our leases we have on various places, to see really, is this the way we should be going now? And if we can deliver housing, then perhaps that's what we should be doing than other things. But that's just a quick one. Really happy to be part of this and working as part of a team to bring much needed housing forward for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. Ashley, would you like to add anything?
Well, first of all, thanks for the Deputy Leader for introducing me as an expert on the subject. I don't think I can say on that. My colleague, Assistant Director Paul Thomas, who you probably know, is our expert. Unfortunately, Paul can't be here tonight. And I also noticed Chris Ashman, my director, is on the call, so I better be careful about me claiming to be an expert. I suppose the important thing to say, and I think the Deputy Leader has mentioned it, is that this is an important and very big topic area for the council. And as you can see from the action list, this is work that stretches across a number of different directorates. Obviously, Colin Rowland's from Neighbourhoods, Chris is Director at Regen that I sit here for, but also adult services as well. So there's a range of issues, and there's a lot of interconnected stuff that goes on here. Councillor Jones-Evans has already alluded to the problems of the pandemic, and we know what the impact has been, particularly on the private rented sector on the island, where you had one of the hardest hits in terms of the impact on that. Second homeowners looking to buy up properties, landlords being forced into, well, government asking landlords to do more and more work to their properties, which have made a lot of those, let's say, amateur landlords move out of the industry, and that's created a big problem that is stretching well beyond just provision of units, but into the care sector and special needs housing as well. So I think the action plan says it all, because it is loaded with items, and prioritising the work on that from across the services is an important piece of work, and obviously is recognised that we've got a housing members board to try and coordinate all of that activity together. So I think I'll just leave it there, Chair, and it's really self-explanatory in terms of what's on that list.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Colin?
I've just opened for questions, really, Chair. My responsibility insofar as neighbourhoods and the housing strategy is regard to quality and standards within the private rented sector particularly, but also support to help people remain in their homes. So the disabled facilities grants process is what we manage. But I think, as the previous speakers have said, it's an integrated strategy. It goes across the board, and it looks at all different tenures. It looks at housing availability. It looks at how we can influence the housing supply as a council, and it looks at all sorts of all the elements that come to make up an overall strategy.
I'm going to ask a question as a new councillor, because sometimes things are not clear to me, but why does it sit under so many different areas? Why doesn't housing just come under housing?
I
think it's, oh, sorry.
Thank you. I think that what you've got to realise is that there are so many cross-cutting issues, and I think that is why it reaches out and goes. And it's a good and with good reason, because if you don't have that cross-fertilisation from various other areas of service, we would tend to lose something, and it could be catastrophic, or it could be that we're missing an opportunity as well. So we have to go across. But really, I mean, when I took over the brief, I want to be not numero uno, but I want to be there. I want to be at the crux of the whole situation, because, as I said when I first opened my mouth about homelessness and what have you, I said, okay, the buck stops here. You know, if there's something catastrophically wrong, then okay, hit me with it. Hopefully there never will be, but I'm prepared to take the brunt of it, and that is why I need to know what's going on throughout, so that we have got the one point of contact in our local authority which you can come to and you can talk to. And I think that's very, very important. But I also feel that going out and across, we need to make sure that those others that are involved, whether it be disability facility grants, or whether it needs to be homelessness or regeneration, we need to we need to make sure that everyone's involved with everything. And I would like to say that I don't know, I inherited some committees. I don't know how, 100 strong, I'd say. Really big committees. We're trying to get it down a bit, because I say, if we can have 5 on a committee, then we can work away and do things. If you have 105, they become talking shops. Thank you.
Any of the committee would like any questions? Councillor Quirk.
The market doesn't meet the housing need of the island. The market sees their clientele as the mainland and the south of England, and builds houses for that market. And fortunately, last night at full council, we actually protected the ability of planning committee to say no to the wrong sort of housing balance, because with the tilted balance in planning, basically anything you turn down is likely to be granted permission by the inspectorate. So you need to be able to not have the tilted balance, and then you can start to question the housing numbers and the types of housing that's being built and the density on the site. And we have turned down sites recently based on the lack of building the wrong sorts of houses and the lack of density in the sites. We've also approved things that have provided or will provide affordable housing. I think it's a shame that the Alliance members have not supported some of those. The rent that's affordable on the island, people say it's around the 60%, 50%, something like that. The 80% number is not a number that is dictated that's what affordable rent has to be. If you look at what Vectis Housing do, most of their affordable rents are around the 60%. What you have to do is find a way of funding it. And the 80% is the sort of level that Homes England will fund that 20% difference. Now, if you've got a housing association and Homes England give you 20%, and the council gives you the land to build it on, which a normal developer would think about 20 to 25% of the cost of the build is the land, then you can actually build houses at around that sort of to rent at around the 50%. So it's possible to do that. But you've got to then be willing to sort of effectively give away the sites or get more money from Homes England. Yes, some parts of the country, Homes England will actually give 40% of the funding, particularly with deprived areas. Now, we're a deprived area. What we should be looking at is trying to get Homes England to see us as that. We do have a problem because Homes England like big sites. They don't like little, so they'd much rather give you the money for 1,000, 2,000 homes than to give you 3 lots of money for 100. And we don't have them. And what the previous administration was looking at within Newport was effectively 3 sites that you lump together, and you've got a 1,000 home site that's attractive to Homes England. And I would commend that to the administration to think about.
Sorry,
Councillor
just was
Jones,
clear.
would you like to
Yeah, sorry,
come back because,
Councillor Cover, just to be
the statement
clear,
there that I
so
think-
you're asking for us to find a site in Newport for 1,000 homes, just that we were asked for?
We put forward 3 sites, the Riverside, both Riverside sites effectively, and the prison site, and that in total gives you a development. So you call it a Newport Regeneration Scheme, and it's 1,000+ homes that you could put onto those sites, and that's the sort of thing that Homes England actually get excited about, and that comes from the chief executive of Homes England, who I actually went to a meeting with.
I think that's obviously just a further discussion point. I think the people of Newport have made their feelings quite clear in all the consultation on the developing island plan. But that's a very interesting point you've made. And just to say, you know, we do need government interventions, as Councillor Ward said about sustainable transport. That's what we need. We need to help us, and that's we've been very, very clear on that. And of course, we are talking to Homes England about various sites. And I think large sites like you're talking about in already a built-up area, I think causes lots of problems. So we have to be a bit more innovative and creative. I just want to say one more thing, if you wouldn't mind, Chair, was you know, I mentioned about modular homes. The expression of interest has just gone out for the modular homes that we're looking at. It's under the Deputy Leader's watch. But we are inviting local providers to apply as well. So our investment that we're putting into these homes, you know, if we get some responses back, that it could be that some money can be spent on the island as well. So we've got that circular economy going. So we don't know what's going to come back, and everything will be assessed. But I know if there's anyone's out there who are building modular homes, then the expression of interest is out there. So there we go.
Councillor Stevens, did you want to? I saw your hand up for a bit, and then we're going to Councillor Ward.
I did want to come back in because I thought the housing was within my remit, but I see that it's good to see that everyone in this chamber, it's your remit as well. So I want your backing. I take into consideration what Councillor Quirk said about last evening. It would have been very difficult for me, Councillor Quirk, and you know which way I voted. I was in a quandary because I don't want the Isle of Wight, you know, to become a mega city of the Solent. But what I do want is our homeless statistics to be reduced drastically. So there are swings and roundabouts, you know, with where I was. But you have a vote, yes or no, or abstain. I didn't abstain. I think it was worth more than an abstention last evening. But what I want to say is that with regards to what we're bringing forward, it is innovative. There are challenges. I take on board what you've said about the 3 sites in and around Newport, but we have other ways of taking things forward, new aspirations and what have you. But we will continue with the registered provider process, which means we can attract funding from Homes England, and that's an area that is open to us now, which will assist us in building our own Isle of Wight Council homes, Isle of Wight Council prices, with the margins set for the island and also affordable rents for our island people. And that's where we need to be. That's where we need to be. Not everyone can afford a down payment or a mortgage, but what we can do is assist people to get their own front door, their own home, and keep the family units together wherever possible, and give people the start that they need. Councillor Jones-Evans is quite right. We're looking not just at modular homes, but we're looking at trying to affect those modular homes from Isle of Wight sources. Now, if we can do that, that's a win-win, because not only do we get money and spend it on modular homes, but we also get a kickback with more people employed, and that's where we need to be. And keep the island pound on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on something that Mr. Ashman said about the changes of standards.
Mr. Ashman isn't
in
here
rental
today.
property.
Are you talking about Ashley?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Mr. Curzon, sorry. Yeah, and the changes of standard in rental properties, which is forcing lay landlords to say, give up, you know, I'm out of this, which means that then somebody is homeless or has to find somewhere else, and someone can't find somewhere else to go. And we seem to be creating, not we, but the society seems to be creating a shortage of rental properties. Now, I just wonder, oh no, I'll ask the question first. Is there any government subsidy to upgrade homes, rental homes like that? Do you know?
I don't think so, Chair, through you. I don't think so in terms of the current legislative requirements that are moving landlords into the position that Councillor Ward has just referred to. I think there are grants that are going to be available, things like the Warmer Homes grants and such like, which probably landlords could apply for under other criteria. But I've heard the same anecdotal issues coming back from those landlords saying that they are struggling to understand both the quantum of the works they need to do and obviously the costs associated with them, which is forcing them into making some of those difficult decisions. And I suppose that, you know, it's a bit of a perfect storm at the moment, isn't it, for all sorts of reasons. And I suppose, you know, what we're trying to do collectively, I think, as an authority and working with our registered social landlord partners, is to try and work through how we can both bring forward new units and hopefully try and encourage those landlords to continue to rent their properties. So I suppose it's the nature about how we implement those regulations and the tone of our conversations with those landlords that probably is as important as the words on the paper as well. So it's a bit of a conundrum, I think, at the moment.
Do we have a regulatory responsibility for checking these homes?
Yeah, yes, we do, Councillor. We've got that responsibility to make sure that houses are the right standard and that tenants are protected in those properties. So yes, we have a role in that respect. We do tend to operate a partnership approach with landlords. Yes, we do have regulatory powers. We are prepared to use them if we're required to, but that's often as a last resort. We'd rather work with a landlord and cooperate with a landlord to make sure those standards are met, rather than actually moving down a regulatory route.
Councillor Quirk and then Councillor Garrett after.
I think we all agree that we need external funding, government funding to get us to where we need to be. I think it's very important to actually put the politics aside and actually look at what the criteria are that the government are giving the money out. If you ask for 100% rental, that doesn't meet what the government Homes England targets say. They say 50% rented, 50% shared ownership. They've dropped the shared ownership down to 10%. So it's almost effectively rented. And actually, if you've got someone who's in private accommodation, private rented now, to go to a shared ownership is still cheaper, a lot cheaper than what they are now, because the mortgage on the same house is less than the rent that they're paying. So, there's, I think you don't need to be hung up on political dogma of it's all got to be for rent. 90% rent, 10% ownership actually gives people a stake in it, and I don't think you should dismiss that part, but that gives you much more likelihood of getting the money out of Homes England if you do it the right way, if you're looking at the right thing to do and looking at their criteria. And I think it's important to look at what we want to get and how do you get there, and steering the course, and going in with a dogmatic approach may not be the way that you get the money.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to come back to the text that's on our agenda paper as to this item about assessing progress. So I note, first of all, we are over 1 year since it was adopted by Cabinet last year. I note that the new administration clearly will have looked at this, and it was said this is one thing they do not want to rip up. So that suggests that the strategy is fit for its purpose, and 1 year on, therefore, should continue to be in place and continue to be progressed. So the key thing for me is, in terms of the strategy as something we can deliver now, rather than the aspirations and hopes and that we have talked about, is, are we on course with all of these items? Are there any, obviously there's always a drift on bits, other bits get ahead. Is anything particularly at risk of not being delivered at the moment, in terms of what's on these many items on this strategy? Well, there are many items here with blobs and ticks and whatever. Are any of them at risk of not being delivered, or are slipping significantly? Does anybody know?
Councillor Stevens, sorry.
At this present time, the Alliance and administration is not looking towards Camp Hill. We've got enough elsewhere to continue with, and that is when I believe it was Councillor Quirk just now mentioned 3 sites, and I did thank him for that. But we were looking at other areas. We're already looking at the cleansing and bringing up to speed 3 brownfield sites at £1 million, and other such things. So that is one thing that leaps out at me. I haven't had an opportunity to go down through them all, but there are a few on here that, such as the hub in Newport, which has been completed, and Ride Village is occupied, Green Meadows, etc. All come on, and this has come through this strategy, which, as I said at the outset, we're not going to open the door and throw it out. We're looking at that, but we're also adding our aspirations and ways forward. But there might well be a couple of other things, Councillor Garrett, that might not be in chiming with where we wish to take things. But as a whole, the strategy is sound, and we are not the type of administration to say everything is bad and doesn't make sense. A lot of it makes sense. There will be things that we will be bringing forward which will add even more sense, more robustness, more sustainability. And I also take on board the situation that Councillor Quirk mentioned with regard to affordable housing. But the thing is that we want a majority of rentable properties, so that when people regain their own stability, shall we say financial stability, that they can move on and they can move into the affordable bracket and buy their own property, and the rental market will ease a little bit because we'll have someone else coming through that front door. And that's what we want, is a throughput. And the message from the Alliance administration, as far as housing is concerned, is to give people a foot in the door and the opportunity to progress. Thank you.
I'm just going to Ashley, who would like to say something. Then
Yeah,
we
I
can
mean,
go
just
to
to cover off
Susie, okay?
Councillor Garrett's direct question, I mean, in terms of the action plan and the obviously the ticks and the blobs, as far as I'm concerned, from the council officer's perspective, we are on track with these at the moment, but clearly, you know, some of these, as we know, require outside agency issues. So we'll continually bring those back to the committee as and when. But at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, they are still all on track.
That's very helpful, and the comment there about Camp Hill, obviously, as the ward councillor, I'm particularly interested if there's a change of emphasis on that. So, but thank you. It is important as for these committees to actually get into the detail, notwithstanding that we don't want to get into operational detail. It's just to making sure everything is on track, that we have unearthed if there are any areas where there is slippage or whatever that presents risk to the authority. On delivery. So I'm pleased to hear that, and I'm pleased to hear the comments of the Deputy Leader as well, and I'm sure I will be pleased to hear the comments of Councillor Jones Evans in a moment.
Sorry, Councillor Jones Evans, it was, is that right?
It was just three things there, just to reiterate, really. You know, this is obviously the document says it's a year old now, but we are sticking with it. But there is all fluidity amongst this as well. So on here it said that Sandown Middle School had stalled. Now we're restarting that again, going back to the table with an extra care facility, which as you know, the Green Meadows one was celebrated last week, and that's been really successful. So we want to try and emulate that as we can. And as I said, you know, because it's such quite a long list, and because of the crisis we're in, that's why we now have asked for monthly housing boards, not quarterly. So that is, you want to say, not a slippage, actually it's an acceleration, so we can really keep on top of this, because it is so important. And you know, with our sites, you know, you have to, so you might remember there's been stalling down at Medina Avenue, various issues there, so we're really looking at that again in a different light, and Sandown Town Hall as well, which is another one which has been a difficult site to bring forward, so constantly being monitored. But as the Dr. just said, it's so complex, all of this, the amount of housing, the type of housing that we're looking at, and we can't obviously deliver it all. It's working with partners as well. It's a big job, but you know, that's why it's really good to have that support with that throughout the cabinet, really, and wider, and with you guys as well. You know, that we're all working towards that same goal. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair, for being kind and let me speak.
To wrap up, if there's no other questions, Councillor Rose.
Thank you. Leading on slightly from what Councillor Garrett said, but sort of drilling down to one point, we've got on here, sustain a positive housing campaign to break down resistance to new housing development. And its July 21 update says, housing campaign on hold due to COVID-19 impact on resources, and then in red, to review a new administration. I'll be interested to know if that has been revisited, or if there's any thoughts around that, particularly because we are all, and the island as a whole, is very vocal about the need for houses, for people that need housing, but the island as a whole is also very vocal that they don't want new housing development in their backyard. So I think a campaign is obviously very important, and I'd just like an update on that if possible, please.
Who's going to take that one?
I do know that campaign will be restarting very soon. It's a shame that Mr. Thomas can't be here, because he'd better give you the full details of that. But yeah, they're quite right. It was stalled because of COVID. But yeah, it's about getting those messages out. And I think so people can understand the situation, because it is quite complex. And unless you know someone who's looking for a home, you may not really understand how vital it is. And there's lots of urban myths going around all the time. You know, we're going to be inundated with people from Birmingham 1 minute, you know, when actually we've got 2,500 people living on the island that need homes. So it's important that that's the message out there.
Thank you. I'm very aware of that, as I have a stepdaughter currently homeless and a 4-year-old granddaughter. So I'm very aware, and I think the need to educate is very important. Thank you very much.
I was going to wrap it up, but Councillor Bacon just wants to say something.
Did indicate some time ago, Chair, when Councillor Quirk spoke. You did.
I'm very sorry.
It's getting late, isn't it? And being the fact it's getting late, I'll be brief. No, it was just because Greenfield was mentioned, and I felt I ought to say something. I mean, we had a very interesting debate last night. I mean, Councillor Quirk said we've voted to be protected. Well, we voted to write a letter, and I think we know what the answer to it is going to be. But the further issues that came into the debate last night were raised, and my problem last night was I don't think they were properly reflected and recognised in what we ended up voting on. You know, part of what I'm here to do with my portfolio is to protect the greenfield or greenfield areas. But I think it became apparent in the debate last night that we had, in relation to the decision that was being made, it was a very narrow decision, and it really was not recognising the wider housing issues, the sort of thing that Councillor Quirk has been raising this evening about need. And we need to bring both sides of the debate together. I ended up abstaining last night because I could not vote to harm the greenfield, but I just felt that debate, and backed up by what we've been saying this evening, we were at risk of ignoring the wider issues. And to my mind, we ended up in a cleft stick at that point. I think what we're recognising, I'm picking up on what Councillor Ellis has said a moment ago, is this is a wider debate. We need to carry on these discussions. We had a positive discussion this evening, had some very interesting discussion last night, but it's how we tie together satisfying that need, but also supporting and protecting our environment. It's not one or the other. And I think there's a risk that we're guilty of at times going down one road, going down the other, and we need to bring the two together. And it's not for me to suggest how this committee goes forward, but I wonder if there's some scope in the future work of the committee to look at bringing those two sides together constructively to work out a unified way forward that meets our need and protects our environment.
Lever, and then we'll wrap it up for this.
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested in the point around developing a tenancy academy to ensure that tenants are adequately trained and prepared to sustain their own tenancies. Is there any information that can be shared about that yet? I think initially I'm just curious, is that to sustain their own tenancies within our own housing providers, or is that longer term within private rental as well? Or?
For you, Chair. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert on that one. Can we provide a written response to the councillor on that? But I'll happily give an update once I speak to my colleague Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, would we like to see this back again and check on progress down the? Yeah, definitely, because it's been sort of May time again, maybe. Thank you very much. Now on to Regeneration Strategy update. So you would have seen on your table a copy of the report. We did get that on email a while ago. Claire, you wouldn't have got that, so you've got that this evening. Councillor Jones-Evans, do you want to? And Ashley, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it again. It's the second part of the cherry, this one. Nothing much more to add. Happy to take questions, of course. Apart from, obviously, we've got the levelling up bid money for East Cowes, and we've now got the times where you can go and see the consultation, so see all the drawings and everything. So that's at the Clumbine building at the Classic Boat Museum. So we've got Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th of December. And then Monday the 13th to Wednesday the 15th of December. So that's at the Clumbine building, East Cowes. We can go and have a look and see what it's all about, and give some feedback. So that will be handy. So it's Friday the 10th of December, 10 till 4, and the same on the Saturday the 11th. And then on Monday the 13th to Wednesday the 15th, it's 12 till 7 p.m. Okay, so that's at the Clumbine building. And apparently, if you go on the 10th and the 11th, you can go free into the Classic Boat Museum. So there you go, a bit of a treat. So worthwhile. And there's some excellent cafes in the East Coast as well, so you can make a day of it. Just the other thing probably to add, we've had our first meeting with Arts Council England, so myself and Councillor Bacon and Mr Ashman and Mr Rowland and our Chief Executive Mr Metcalf were there, and I have to say it was a very fruitful and promising meeting. Extremely, yes. And they said to us, don't think that the Isle of Wight has got some sort of limited pot of money. Don't think like that. Be bold, be visionary, you know, don't be afraid. Come to us with your big ideas. So, you know, us being us, had several big ideas which they didn't faint at. So, you know, including doing stuff like maybe down on the harbour, you know, within the master plan, which actually will be that's SPD's coming forward to go on. So the consultation for the harbour master plan to be an SPD on the island plan is going out for consultation. I think we're deciding that next month. I think is that still on track for next month? Yeah. So we'll make it next month. So, but part of that, which you'll get to look at as part of the consultation, is there's the plan pointed out that we could do with a really big cultural centre, conference centre for businesses right in the harbour. So, and also to some community use as well. So that was pinpointed there. And yeah, that was like, they were quite up for that. You spoke about one of your
and we did mention, I think I should say, we did mention Sandown. We
did mention Sandown a lot. Yeah, we did. You did. Yes, yeah, no, they said to us, we want we're looking at Ryde and Newport and the Bay in particular. They recognise basically that the Isle of Wight hasn't really had its fair share, and that's one of priority places. But they realise what a wealth of culture we've got to bring down here. So yeah, very fruitful. Just the first phase in all of that, and. What else? That was that, and of course, you know, Southampton have got through to the next round, as you know, and we're just going to be discussing that, our part of that as being their partner. And again, Arts Council England said, you know, think that you have won it. That's how you want to behave, because even if we don't, I'm sure we will, Southampton will. If we don't, we'll have some projects then that we can move forward with. So I think that's really important. And yeah,
I just add on that, but of course, they said that projects you're developing, I think what you're saying, Julie, is look to actually deliver them whether we win or not.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought I was saying that, but yeah, thank you.
But there was a strong indication that while the odds are good, pop down to Betfred or whatever.
Yeah, and we still have to put quality. Still have to put quality applications in, of course. But you know, we're not short on that, and yeah, very excited and want to work with us. And it's really good that we're in the southwest as well, so we can work with Cornwall and other places that have been really successful. And I think their sort of demographics are very much more similar to the islands rather than us sort of competing with Brighton, for instance. So it's all very good. But I think I'll let Councillor Bacon speak about the other bit, because.
Sorry, what was the other? I thought I'd said.
The bit I kicked you on the table at the time to mention.
Oh, that. Which I was going to mention anyway. No, it was, and this touches on Sandown, of course, that part of what they indicated was that you possibly think of the Arts Council, and as they said there, you think about dusty art galleries and collection and old collections and so on. And it is in part about that, but it's making things live and vibrant. And what they do want to do is support existing, perhaps maybe moribunds, putting it too far, but collections that are not realising their potential, which we have a few of. We have a lot of stuff in storage here that should be seen, that we could make a lot more, and we can make a lot more of our geology and paleontology. And so we said, you know, if you've got a collection that we think we could improve and it has international potential. Is that something the Arts Council could fund? Answer, yes, it definitely is. And so that very much ties in with a lot of the sort of discussion we've been having in recent weeks. I'm very, very enthused that there's some strong possibilities there.
We're just waiting to have back the 3 agreed priorities that we can both sign up to, the council, council and the Arts Council. And just as another FYI, for anyone who's interested in this whole let's create the priority place agenda that's coming forward, wants to work with the Arts Council, there's a networking evening next Thursday night at 6:30 till 8 at Independent Arts in Newport High Street. Yeah. So you can book online on Eventbrite, and if you want to go, but it's just to say, so anyone who's interested in that, big opportunity to meet with our independent arts and some of the other cultural organisations on the island, and to see how best we can make the most of this 3-year of being a priority place.
Thank you for your update. Yeah, so questions. Yeah. Anybody got any questions? No? Oh, Councillor Quirk.
Great to see the report. Everything's going on, and a lot of things that we recognise from the old administration. It's good to see that they're still there. There's quite a few things here where we've got aspirations to move them ahead. We haven't got any timescales for targets for that. With not just this council, councils across the country tend to have slippage. And if you don't actually have a date to try and do something by to start off with, you'll almost certainly get slippage. And I just wonder if we could start to look at these things for future reports of, you know, where we're going. We're looking to do something with Nicholson Road, and when are we going to do it by? Because then we'll know whether we've done it or not, and it's something to look back and say, yes, we succeeded, or no, we didn't. I just think maybe some targets and dates to achieve some stepping stones would not be a bad thing in this sort of report.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, obviously, I'm happy to try and provide as much information as we can to Scrutiny to help them understand where we are on the projects, and appreciate, yeah, some of the stuff probably does need some firmer dates on those, and we'll certainly take that away and come back with for when we bring the report back at a future meeting, Chair.
Yeah, and of course, Chair, the corporate plan that was agreed last night, and thank you everyone for their support on that. In Regen, we do have quite a few targets there, so we can easily sort of do a mashup, can't we? I seem to recall previously we used to have more formal reports as well as just these sort of more chatty updates. So there's probably a sweet spot to be found there.
Yeah, it's just that I mean, Regen got tick the boxes on the corporate plan. You know that you had, but that not everywhere did. So, but you did tick the boxes there that you had some dates for things. But I think it would be good, you know, to sort of build the stepping stones, because to get to, you know, you don't want to get to sort of something by 3 years' time, and you find that we're 3 years behind. If you've got the stepping stones to get to where we want to be in 3 years, and it's sort of, you've got some sort of target every 6 months, you can see whether you're on track for it. And I think that's quite important. So if you're scrutinising, you want to be able to see whether we're making progress of where we want to end up, and you don't want to end up just saying, "Oh, we missed it."
Yeah. We've also got all the targets within the Regen strategy itself, and thank you for recognising that we haven't turned the ship around and gone away from this, because Regen takes a long time, and we're investing lots of money into it and lots of time, and it's really important because it's based on using our assets. It would be silly really to go away from that, but we've got plenty of targets, haven't we, Ash? And perhaps we can do like a mashup where you've got some nice narrative, and then you've got some, and how that goes along with the Regen strategy and with the corporate plan as well.
Thank you, and thank you for that. Anybody else? Joe, Claire? No. Ian?
Yes, Chairman, obviously the corporate plan's now being agreed. We will have a look at as it's been suggested, there's some target dates in there. We'll have a look to see if we can carefully monitor the delivery of that. But if members, cabinet members and officers have any particular wishes or items that they wish to include on the work plan, please contact either myself or the chairman.
You carry on.
And indicated what could be possible, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Where are we at with that then? Is it still going on the work plan?
Bacon said he'd brief me next week, but I would like it on the work plan anyway.
It should be on the work plan. I think that's absolutely right. I'd said to Councillor Ward, in respect of ideas that are starting to generate following the decision of Cabinet, I'm not sure I said next week because it might be a little bit overambitious. Because as I said, we do have someone in the process who has serious family illness at the moment that's taken them out of the loop for a while. It should be on the work plan, and I will just keep in touch with Ian and tell you things when I can. Yeah.
Sorry, it was just to assure Councillor Quirk that we had the request from yourself and Councillor Beston that there'll be a wider meeting for the Alder Bay members because of the huge amount of interest and significance of that area.
We did come up with an agreed wording for your motion last night, which will, I assume, appear on the next full council agenda. I'm happy to say that we will accord with that, and there'll be full consultation, which will involve Bay tourism businesses because they're part of the picture of what we need for this island.
Is there anything else anybody would like to see on the work plan? Obviously, it's a moving document, so you can always contact me. Let's have a conversation about it outside, maybe, if anything comes up. Is that okay, Paul? Yep. Members' questions, we haven't had any written in, so I presume we're okay. And we've asked them, yeah. If you've got any at this point, we probably haven't done it properly, have we? Okay, and we'll see you next time then. So that's it. Go home now. Thank you so much. I'll forgive you. Not next time though. It's